SBC Media.
Brazil, a global economic powerhouse, deeply passionate about sports, and now home to one of the hottest markets in gaming. And we're giving it the full SBC treatment. Join industry leaders, market experts, and all the major players in the country for 3 days of content, exhibition, and epic networking at the first ever SBC Summit Rio.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
The relationship between payments and gaming is vital, with the gaming sector leaning on payment tech to ensure a safe and smooth player experience. The gaming industry will have had a keen eye on developments of innovation in payments that took centre stage last week in the UK as the government pitched plans for future growth. We take a closer look at the autumn budget and why payment tech is set to take centre stage and what this means for the gaming industry in today's iGaming Daily. As I'm joined by the payment expert team. Callum, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good, Joe. Good to be on another iGaming Daily. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all good, thank you. I'm all good. Excited to talk payments and gaming and something in between. Joined by the new editor of Payment Expert as well, the most well-positioned man to talk on this subject, Ted Orme-Claye. Ted, how are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Joe. Also, yeah, happy to be here to get into the sort of nitty-gritty of this for you guys.
Well, the nitty-gritty is where we shall go, and let's kick it off by talking, I guess, a little bit about not just the budget last week, but we've seen this focus from Rishi Sunak on AI and on fintech. The government is very much pitching its future plans as part of the budget and as it looks forward. Have there been any announcements within payments and fintech that the gambling sector should really take note of?
Yeah, I don't mind taking the lead on this one. Obviously, turning the UK into a sort of leading hub for fintech has been quite a big ambition of this government for a while. It's been almost like a pet project of Rishi Sunak from even before he was Prime Minister. And that's obviously something that the gambling sector should pay a lot of attention to, because as you mentioned earlier, Joe, the two sectors are highly intertwined. Gambling companies are always looking for new forms of financial technology that can help them improve the customer journey, but also increasingly sort of protect players and meet regulatory requirements. If we want to get more into the specifics of what the government announced last week, let's just look at, I don't know, some more like macroeconomic ones, I guess. They want to do a lot of support they want to bring in, a lot of more support for SMEs, with the betting sector being such a large industry. Obviously, there's various companies of varying sizes in there. There's some of the smaller actors out there who often do have to compete quite hard against, some of these big FTSE 100 level giants. Might want to have a look at what they could gain from some of these measures. And then on top of that, from a sort of technological standpoint, you've got this £500 million investment that the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt announced last week to put into fintech, in particular in AI technology, which is something that a lot of betting companies now have a lot of interest in, to cover various aspects of the business, from marketing, player protection, advertising, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, the player protection one's really interesting because, I don't know what the future looks like for AI, and I don't know the impact it could have, but we see increasing stringency, increasing strictness on affordability checks. And if AI can play a role in that and smoothing that process, that could definitely be huge, right?
Yeah, the automation of AI has just accelerated beyond, I think, anything that we could have even imagined at this point, and it's only going to get smarter. It's going to get a lot quicker, and it's something that whilst it provides almost limitless benefits, it also provides an equal amount of limitless risks involved. So I think in terms of automation, if we're already seeing it now when we call into banks, there's automated call centres and helplines readily available there to help you out and sort your issues and queries. If that can be applied as well to gambling operators and how they deal with those customer issues, then that's fine as well. But when it comes to also the risks involved there, then AI can still be manipulated. There's still a lot of raw and green AI models out there that could be tampered with. So yeah, I think it's also we just got to be a bit more on the safe side when it comes to that at the minute.
Have you ever used AI helpline out of interest?
Yeah, when ringing with NatWest, my banking provider, they use AI.
Come on, don't
AI
sit on the
automated.
fence. How was it? What was the experience like?
It's still like most AI at the moment. It's still in its early infancy stage. I mean, we've seen a lot of things with ChatGPT right now, but that is a different type of AI we're experiencing. There's a whole bunch of models out there, but yeah, when it comes to the online banking calls, it could be a bit more refined.
Yeah, I've used a few AI helplines and sort of, when you sort of get support from an AI thing, it's pretty raw at the moment. It's pretty challenging. And Ted, have you ever experienced this? Or
not off the top of my head, no. I don't know if I ever have done for banking personally. Not yet, anyway.
Yeah.
I've not found myself in a situation of that to yet. At least not. To fair say this, not knowingly. I mean, I've sometimes I've interacted with like a chat bot of some sort of customer service thing. Could well have been AI.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah, sorry, mate. Didn't give you the definitive answer you wanted there, did I?
No, a few away from banking as well. I know like a few sort of commerce and even I think betting sites have where you go for an AI support just to remove the sort of manual labour of it. It's an interesting experience, and I echo what Callum says is not all there just yet.
I mean, something building on that. I mean, something that is quite important with AI, is, as Callum mentioned, is the and yourself, Joe, is sort of the player protection element of it. This is something that's become incredibly important to betting operators in the UK lately. In the aftermath, in the aftermath and in the context of the Gambling Act review and all these various enforcement actions and financial penalties we've seen levied against a lot of operators for social responsibility failings and not meeting certain licensing conditions. The government and the commission are putting a lot of pressure on companies now to ensure that player protection is front and center, is a number one priority. AI's got a lot of potential here from a lot of sort of stakeholders I've spoken to as a way of analysing player behaviour, really sort of providing a top-down look at how someone's interacting with their gambling, if there's suddenly spikes in it, if they're playing at at stranger times of the day, like if they're playing at 2 a.m. or something, as opposed to at like 3 o'clock during the Premier League kickoff or something like that. And that can make that can then be analysed and looked at by AI, and it flags that person up saying that this guy might be starting to encounter some problems, and then you can interact with them on a human level. So there's definitely that sort of multi-layered approach that can be brought in through that.
That's an interesting point, and it's vital that you mentioned the multi-layered approach there, because you can't lean solely, from what you're saying anyway, right now you can't lean solely on the AI, to take player protection as your player protection strategy. It needs to be a combination of the two, and to bring them together to find the most efficient way of doing this, I guess, and of protecting players and identifying spikes and identifying trends that are red flags. It's best to have a mixed approach and a sort of collaboration between the human input and the AI input.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, yeah, so we've talked a lot about AI. I mean, that's, like I said, this is one of the biggest developments we've seen in both, affecting fintech, affecting betting, affecting all sorts of sectors. I mean, Callum, I'd be interested to hear from you, mate, just because I know you've covered a lot of various sort of trends in payments and fintech during your time at SBC. I just think, like, looking back over recent years, what do you reckon are some really significant developments and that operators should take note of?
When it comes to payment innovation and just technological innovation over the past couple of years, particularly in the UK, there has been, as this goes back to what Joe was saying in terms of Rishi Sunak's commitment to make not just England and the UK as a global fintech hub, but also digital asset hub, a hub for where digital innovation can flourish. Now he's been quite, I wouldn't say he's been quite a staunch supporter of crypto and blockchain, but he's definitely putting in the right parameters for this to flourish in the next couple of years. I remember, was it Ben Ruffles, the VP of Public Policy? He even outlined in the autumn budget that they're seeing a lot of progress in terms of the potential digital pound, which is a central bank digital currency, which is basically a digital form of cash. And whilst a digital pound or a CBDC I don't anticipate that to be in circulation in the next 10 years or so. It's still something that is being talked about everywhere across the globe in terms of its development, its use cases, pilot projects, as a form of transaction that is almost instantaneous. And I think if we want to harken back to gambling operators and what they're looking at now in the fintech and payment space, I think CBDCs is something really interesting in terms of how transactions can be made through this digital currency. So, yeah, I think that would bring immense player attention if they were to adopt them.
That's really interesting, and something to add there on. I think pick up something you said really quickly, but about him, not being a staunch supporter. I think unless he's apart from taking the approach of the new Argentine Prime Minister or the Argentine President, wherever he is, where he's running around on.
He's not quite shut the central bank down yet.
Yeah. Without running around talking about shutting down the central bank, I think Rishi Sunak has been as big a supporter for the crypto sector as any, really. And the other sort of technological advancement that I think has really had a tangible effect on gambling from the payment space is open banking. We've spoken a lot about player protection, and the impact open banking can have there is key. It was pointed out in the white paper review, but also let's talk about the withdrawal process, because I remember when it was 3 to 5 working days, you'd win your occasionally you'd win your bet on a Saturday, and then you'd cash out and your money would be in your bank by Wednesday or Thursday. Gone are those days now because of open banking where it's instantaneous, and that has a huge impact on the player experience and subsequently player retention and just general player engagement. But that one, open banking, a real tangible effect on payment development that's had a real tangible effect on the user experience and customer retention.
Yeah, 100%. Open banking is a huge one. Like you mentioned, it's crazy how long it took, considering how big the online sector is in the UK and how much it's been growing over sort of the past decade or two. It's mad that it took that long for a lot of companies, I think, to really get to grips with the open banking thing and cut down that withdrawal process from what was, as you said, a couple of days to what is now just almost instantaneous. So obviously huge for the customer journey, really important for that, for customer satisfaction, customer experience. Also probably helps people with budgeting and things like that. When they've just put, if you don't have to wait 5 days for the money to come out after you've just won something. You then know exactly what's in your account. But then in this, if we're going to relate it to some of the regulatory stuff we've been talking about with the Gambling Act review, big measure of that, probably one of the defining measures was obviously the finance risk checks, their response to the affordability checks that have been called for the past 2 years. Open banking is going to play a bit of a role in this, according to the UK Gambling Commission's plans. So basically, when a customer, when credit reference checks are needed to assess whether a customer is financially stable enough to gamble, open banking is going to take a role in this to sort of allow a more transparent, you could say, way of looking at it. So
it can just break down the barriers that are in the way of an operator getting a true financial picture of a customer. It's
basically open data, essentially.
As the name suggests.
Open data. It's a way of companies being able to trade and look into data of customers and consumers, and then really being able to tailor certain verification or affordability checks tailored to that consumer as well, to advise them and such forth.
But what's key in its effectiveness, really, one of the things that will stand in the way, what's key to its growth, is mass adoption. Without mass adoption, it's all a bit futile. So those are really the next steps that we need to look at. And I think there was something published recently that the UK, can't be left behind on open banking technology, and there is a risk for the gambling sector that if the UK is left behind on open banking technology and open banking adoption, then it's going to have a knock-on effect for the space.
Yeah, as well with traditional gambling credit as well. It's been shown to make quite inaccurate or making accurate affordability decisions. But then there's also the production of multiple physical documents, such as bank statements and payslips, that can be that can have that type of friction, to deliver to somebody. Whereas open banking is almost just frictionless as possible. So it's just helping up speed that process. But I also guess a question I have for you two as well is, I know affordability checks are already kind of being pushed back at the moment in the gambling sector. And then the introduction of open banking would then almost free up all the users' data in terms of this. Like, I'm just curious if you think users are going to be so willing and open to sharing their data with multiple operators.
That's an interesting one. I think, because you're right. We've already seen some pushback on it, and we know that there's that petition that's been going around, hasn't there? And we've seen that some customers are already they're not happy with. It's very important. I think you mentioned pay slips and financial statements, things like that, Callum, because that's something that a lot of people have already said very clearly. They're not happy with sharing this very personal information with a lot of operators.
With sort of open banking, though, all the checks would go on behind the scenes. It wouldn't be,
exactly.
I think that's one of the things it removes, where you have to send in this document and that document. But so I think with open banking, it would go on behind the scenes, and it's a smoother process that is less friction between the player and the operator. Yeah,
it seems to eliminate a lot of hurdles, you could say, that's sort of in the way, as opposed to, if you want to use sort of a racing metaphor to get to the end of that sort of finance risk chase race, I've got to go over various hurdles of open banking. It's just one smooth, straight run. I guess the other thing as well, maybe there could also be an element of a generational thing with this. I mean, you see open banking does tend to get used and trusted a lot more and adopted a lot more among tends to be a younger demographic, doesn't it, as opposed to traditional banks. So maybe we'll see a difference there with bettors as well. I'd just say, I think, so obviously the recommendation that you mentioned earlier, Joe, was obviously the Future of Payments review, wasn't it, that was published last week. There's a lot of recommendations for the government, really strongly encouraging the acceleration of open banking and making sure the UK is not left behind. I'd really think a lot of operators should pay attention to what's going on there and what measures the government are bringing in to encourage the adoption of this technology, because for the reasons we've discussed today, I think it's going to have a lot of significance for that sector.
Yeah, I couldn't agree any more, Ted. I think the industry, the gaming industry, and the gambling industry really needs to take note of UK progression when it comes to open banking. And I think other global markets will do the same as well, because it could be such a pivotal tool. But fascinating to see how it develops. It's going to be a really interesting one, especially as we head into the new year with hopefully some progression on white paper consultations as well, and complete a review of the Gambling Act. But for today, that's all the time we have. And I thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Callum. Appreciate the discussion. Appreciate your insight as always.
SBC Media.